Hi, everyone. You are listening to the Rachael Maves Podcast, and I'm Rachael Maves, your host. This podcast is part of the lead up to the upcoming Measure What We Value Summit, scheduled for February 5th through 6th, 2025 in Fresno, California. The summit emphasizes honoring and amplifying student voices, fostering inclusive classrooms, and equipping educators with tools for impactful change. You can find more information at parsecsummit.com. Today, we are talking with Sinead Kiley. Sinead is a high school senior and student board member for Poway Unified School District, representing over 35,000 students. She is passionate about education reform, addressing homelessness, and expanding opportunities for vulnerable students. As the Western Regional Strategy Coordinator for the National Student Board Member Association, she advocates for students' rights nationwide and has worked on legislation to support student board members. Sinead hopes to pursue a future in politics to drive meaningful reform on a larger scale. Wow, Sinead, thanks for joining me today.
Thank you. I'm glad for you to have me.
I'm really excited to jump into this conversation and hear a little bit more about, really what even drove you to this idea of political stuff. But before we jump into that, I'd love for you just to tell us a little bit about yourself, and I'd love to hear what brings you joy, what do you love to do, what fills your bucket as a student?
Yeah. So I've always been like the kid with her hand raised super high in the classroom. That's always been me. I've always been that like kind of nerdy kid. I've always been super interested in education. And I felt like I was pretty well rounded. And as a student, I love writing, love art. Like those are my two passions above all else. And that's always what's brought me joy. So I feel like that's kind of like as I've gone through my career as a student, first grade through 12th grade, I saw changes in those classes and everything, and it just really interested me in education and everything to do with that. So that's kind of me.
That's awesome. So is that the thing that you love to do? Do you have any hobbies or things that you enjoy outside of that?
I am a dancer. I love to dance. I love to paint. I feel like I'm a pretty artistic person. Not to like humble brag on myself, but yeah, those are my outlets. Yeah.
That's awesome. No, own your accomplishments. That's not a humble brag. That is owning your accomplishments. That's awesome. Wonderful. My daughter is super artsy too. She that is her happy place.
Yeah.
She's the world of the artistic bent. Yeah.
That's great. Yeah.
So I want to hear just a little bit from you. What motivated you to get involved with the National Student Board Member Association?
So I guess my whole journey starts with how I became a student board member in the first place, because that was what launched me into becoming a part of the National Association. And our school district went through pretty rocky times last year, having to do with superintendents and scandal and transparency issues. It was a whole thing, and it originated at my high school. And I kind of saw these issues kind of crumbling down around me. And I was thinking about how I had always been involved in, community service and leadership in my community. And I thought, this is my chance. I heard about the opportunity. I thought that this was so cool that our district was offering a space for students to be able to give input. And I had a lot of thoughts, off the back of everything that had happened. So I ran and, obviously I was selected for the position. And my predecessor said, here's the contact information for the National Student Board Member Association. They helped me with a program to get me interested in the role. And as a student board member, they kind of just throw you into the position. There's not a lot of preparation that goes into your role. I went to my first meeting, didn't understand any of the jargon. It was difficult financial stuff, the budgets, the loans. It was hard to wrap my head around, and I felt like the National Student Board Member Association was a place where I could really latch onto and get some of that information. And then they reached out and they said, we have some leadership positions that we're looking for people to apply to. Would you be interested? So I guess I had a pretty classic story. I just thought that for me as a student board member, I had seen the impact of what the school board had done and how my direct input could help. And they had this opportunity, this network of 500 other student board members with all these experiences and all this legislation they were working on across California, across the whole country. And I thought that it was the coolest thing ever. You don't oftentimes see youth groups that are so motivated to do work, especially in communities that directly impact them. And education, the constituents are the students. And it was so interesting to me. I hadn't ever thought that I would become involved at a national level like that before they reached out. But, obviously I applied and now here I am. So that's my journey to NSBMA. I was just really interested in all the work that they do. I thought it was so cool.
That's what a powerful organization. And it sounds like, if I'm hearing you correctly, there are two things that you really appreciate about it. One is the professional development, like of just what does it mean and look like to be a student board member. But then the second one is the community that it provides of other student board members. Can you tell me a little bit about, like, what does that preparation look like? How do they come along and support you as a student board member to fully understand and embrace that role?
Yeah. So every summer they have a START program, START, and it's, some long acronym. But they organize with student board members who are incoming, and we reach out to everyone who, their old student board member is gone and now they're replacing their role. We reach out, we provide presentations, information, resources. And a big thing that we have more recently this year that, I'm working on one right now for book banning, which is a big topic of conversation right now, and lots of student board members are grappling with it. But these information sessions where we'll reach out to as many student board members as we can, get them in a meeting, and we'll do a presentation on various topics. We've done some on age relationships between some of the older board members and how to communicate with them as a student and how to foster professionalism in those environments. Just things that normal kids wouldn't be able to understand in their day-to-day, but you really need as a student board member, skills that you need to have and be able to deal with specific issues. So that's a big way that NSBMA has supported me and other student board members in that regard.
I love it. What a powerful organization, and how important.
Yeah.
I mean, for you as student board members and for districts. If any of the district books are listening to this, if you have student board members, I highly recommend you check out this agency to provide that support, because it sounds like, Sinead, what I'm hearing you say is to just give you a deeper level of preparation, confidence to be able to really embrace that role. I'd love to hear how your role as a student board member has really shaped your perspective on education.
Yeah. So I worked in local government for a little, which is funny. I'm 17, but I had some experience with local government, and I worked in constituent services. So the huge part of that was just communicating with the people in your district. What do they want? What are they thinking? How are they feeling about these decisions you're making? And I looked to education and my own community, and it felt like all the decisions were so separate from the people that they were affecting. As an educator, as an administrator, who are the people that your decisions are directly impacting? It is your students. Those are your constituents. And I felt that school boards around the country didn't really handle that the way that I felt that it should be handled. And that's how it's mainly changed my perspective. And NSBMA holds this, obviously we share the same perspective here, that students need to have a larger role in their education, because that's what it's about. It's about your constituents. It's about fostering relationships. It's about understanding how your decisions impact kids. And I remember, this is just my own, as a child, and I was in elementary school, I lived in a community that had a pretty large, Chinese American population. And there's an elementary school that was a couple elementary schools away that got this Chinese immersion program. And I thought that it was so strange, even as a kid, and my parents were wondering too, why they had gotten this program when our community, I felt, had so much need for a program just like that. And I feel like if there had been more connections to the student body or to the actual families that these decisions were impacting, it would have made such a difference. And I think that, at board meetings, the public is allowed to visit, but I feel like you're not really going to reach a broad majority of people. My district has 35,000 students, so 35,000 families.
Yeah.
And at a board meeting, we get maybe 100 people showing up to talk about their opinions. So having student board members and student input, that's really where my perspective is now. You need it. It's not a maybe, it's a must, because that's what representative democracy is. And at a very small level, that's representative democracy. So that's my opinion on that.
I love it's such an important piece that, I mean, yes, you're bringing to your school, but now having had all of these experiences, you're going to bring to the world. And it's really exciting, Sinead. So when you think about, you're going to be joining us at the summit. So I'm super excited to meet you in person. How do you think hearing from students like you at the summit will help shape future decisions in education?
Like I said, I think it's about how firsthand accounts change policy. Like, really, what we're looking at is policy here, you know? And I think that in my district, like, student voice is so transformative, and in other districts too. I have this friend who's in Washington. She's a student board member. We met through NSBMA, and we were discussing how we've had the policies in our district, and she said that she convinced her district to let them do a vote for the students at this high school on whether or not they wanted open enrollment or not. And I thought that that was so powerful, that this district relinquished their power to the students to be able to make up their own mind about this decision. And so I think hearing stories like that, success stories, like my story, her story, almost every single student board member story that I hear is a success story on how students have been empowered in their districts. So I think that hearing from us, hopefully it'll help boards to be able to understand, not boards, but administrations, teachers, educators, understand how important it is to have student voice, not to trivialize it, not to, believe that we're too young to be able to take a stand in our own education. I know there's legislation across the country that NSBMA is supporting to lower the voting age for school board members specifically to 16. And I think that that type of stuff is so powerful in policymaking, because when policymakers and educators listen to students, that's when I think decisions are most relevant, most equitable, and most effective. And we tend to stray away from that when we lose sight of who we're actually serving. So
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to hear, if you wouldn't mind sharing, like one or two things that you've been working on in particular that you're really passionate about, that you've been able to enact as change within your school district.
Yeah. So something big, and I guess this is like the first thing that I directly worked on, and for myself and for future student board members, is it takes a lot of time, right, to be a student board member. It takes a ton of effort to look over everything, prepare yourself, and there's tons of students in my district and all other districts, and this is a huge thing, that are socioeconomically disadvantaged and need to have a job. And being a student board member and having a job is just not feasible at the same time with the time constraints of both positions. And so starting from after my year, we've implemented a policy that student board members will now be compensated through a scholarship or like new technology and things like that. So I hope it will open up the position to kids that don't normally see their faces in government. And we've been working on pushing that out to other boards across California. So I think that that's a big one just within my own role. And then outside of that, something that I'm proud of working on is CTE courses and like expanding the alternative education courses across our district and like raising awareness for that for middle schools, because at least in our district, and I know so many across the country that are like that, the culture has turned into this very competitive race in high school to become like top of your class and go to a four-year university and have this life that's planned out. And it's very cultural and it affects student mental health. And that's a huge thing. When you ask high school students, middle school students, what's your number one issue? What do you feel is going wrong? Mental health, mental health, mental health, mental health. And so I think the best way to address that problem is to open up choice and opportunity again. So we've been working on presentations to middle schoolers and doing ambassador visits and trying to just change the culture slowly, time and time again, to make sure that students feel that there isn't just one right path. There isn't just one journey. You can be an electrician or construction worker. We have internships for that. We've created the opportunities. Like, these are things that districts should be striving towards to give their students as much of breadth of opportunity as possible. So those are like my two
Exciting. Really exciting. Good for you. You should feel good about that. That's awesome. So when you reflect and you think about the work that you've done with the National Student Board Member Association, what's one way you feel like you've really grown through that membership and participation in that organization, or even just as your work as a student board member?
I feel like this is a cheesy answer, but I feel like I've become a more empathetic individual because I've become a part of this community across the entire country. People's experiences are so different when you go from place to place. And there's this thread that obviously ties everyone in my community. We're all representing students on this broad level. And I think that I've begun to understand the challenges that people face across so much space. Like, I don't know, it's hard for me to even wrap my head around how much like issues that I hear about in Baltimore, in Maine, in New York, in Texas, in Florida. Like in Texas, they don't have student board members at all. And we're fighting with students there to start bringing that legislation to the table. And I just feel so much more connected to youth leaders. And also, I feel more hopeful. There's such a big community of students that are willing to work on change like this. And I'm sure I'll work on this past when I've graduated high school and beyond, because it's an issue that's very near and dear to my heart now. That I'm hopeful for the future. I'm optimistic. I don't know if I could have said that before, but like we have a generation of student leaders that are really doing something and are going to continue doing throughout their lives. So I think that a big part of that is the community that I've had.
Really exciting. So you're a senior this year, right? This
is my last year of high school.
What are your plans for after high school?
I am planning on majoring in political science and, attending a four-year university. Kind of following on that life path. I don't know exactly where I'm going to end up or do. I know lots of kids my age, they have like their lives down. Like I'm going to go to med school, I'm going to become a surgeon, do cardio. I'm kind of like, I know the general fields, international relations, political science. I kind of see myself in the future working at a nonprofit or the UN or something like that. Like, I feel like my personality lends itself to that type of work. So that's kind of where I see my future building up. But who knows? Everything could change.
Well, and really exciting. And you're right. There's so many pathways in what you're exploring and what you're looking at and doing moving forward that, it really is limitless in what direction politics takes. So I'm just glad that you're in it, and we need great thinkers and people who are bringing in voice and have that layer of empathy. So thank you, Sinead, for just being a part of the conversation.
Yeah. I feel thankful for every time I talk to another student board member. I'm mind blown at the work they've done and like how much they've helped their communities. So yeah.
What is one thing that you're looking forward to about joining us for the summit?
I feel like I've emphasized this a lot, but I'm really interested in community and like getting my voice out there and talking to educators and stuff. And I'm sure because California, although if you petition, this is like the law, if you petition, a student board member position will be had. I'm sure I will meet educators, administrators, students who come from districts where opportunities like mine aren't as big. They don't have a superintendent student advisory council. They don't have a student board member. They don't have representatives. And I just want to get that out there, that information, because once you know about it, once you've stopped becoming ignorant to this fact, kids, educators, they love it. Like I know it's something that a lot of people are passionate about. So that's what I'm most fired up for, is to find another community of people who are willing to share in my vision for like a better future for education.
Yeah. That's wonderful. Well, thank you, Sinead, for your time today. It's been such a pleasure and privilege to connect with you, and I appreciate
I'm so excited to meet you now.
I know in person is going to be great. Thank you.
Okay.
Forest Lake Education is hosting the Measure What We Value Summit on February 5th through 6th in Fresno, California. Join us for impactful conversations on empathy and engagement, hard truths, and more, alongside leaders like Shaka Booker, Rich Stoll, Jamila Scott, Pepper Miller, and student speakers like Timmy Alori and Sinead Kiley. Tickets are limited, so make sure to secure your spot today. Get your tickets at parsecsummit.com.